Some betrayals don't come from enemies. They come from the people who raised you, who swore they loved you, who promised that family was everything that I grew up believing in that promise. Believing that no matter how bad life got, I could always count on my parents. But I was wrong when my mother and father handed over the one thing I'd been promised since childhood. The family heirloom meant for me. They didn't just break their word. They looked me in the eye and told me I was too successful to deserve it. That's when I learned the truth. In their eyes, my hard work made me less worthy than my sister's failures did, so I smiled. I congratulated my sister, and I began planning. What they didn't realize was that I had no intention of letting them walk away with their betrayal. By the time I was finished, the heirloom would be worthless to them, and their lives would never be the same. Stay until the end. You'll want to know how I turned their greed to ruin. I was the firstborn daughter of a very traditional family. My father worked as an accountant his entire life, a quiet man with neat habits and a love for order. My mother ran a small boutique, the kind of shop that survived more on gossip and loyal clients than real profit. We weren't rich, but we weren't struggling either. Our lives were built on appearances, on looking respectable to neighbors, on making sure people whispered admiration rather than pity. Respectability mattered more than wealth, more than honesty, more than fairness, and at the center of that respectability was a necklace. From as early as I can remember, my mother would lift the velvet case from her dresser drawer and open it like she was showing me a secret treasure. Inside lay a diamond necklace, delicate and fierce all at once, catching the light in a way that seemed almost supernatural to a child's eyes. "This," she would say, her voice hushed with reverence, "will be yours one day. Firstborn daughters always inherit it. It's tradition." I would sit wide-eyed, feeling the weight of that promise press into my chest. The necklace wasn't just jewelry. It was proof that I belonged, that I mattered. It was a future tethered to a past, a promise sealed in diamond. And I believed her with every piece of my soul. So I worked. God, how I worked. Straight as in school. Late nights with textbooks while my friends were at parties. A scholarship to a good university where I studied design while juggling part-time jobs. Then a job at a firm. And eventually, with enough sleepless nights and coffee-fueled mornings, I started my own company. By 28, I had carved out a life that looked impressive on paper, a modern apartment in the city, a stable income, respect in my field. Meanwhile, my younger sister, Hannah, walked an entirely different path. Hannah was the free spirit. At least, that's how my parents described her, though others used harsher words. She floated between college majors like a dandelion seed in the wind. Literature one semester, psychology the next, art history after that. No plan, no discipline, just vague dreams of being something great. The only thing she managed to collect was debt. Boyfriends came and went like seasons, each one leaving her in a worse situation than the last. Sometimes she'd move in with them. Sometimes she'd come crying home. And without fail, she always called our parents when things fell apart. And without fail, they answered, "Of course, honey, we'll help. Don't worry, we'll figure it out." Checks were written, bills paid, rescues staged. I lost count of how many times I overheard my mother sigh after hanging up the phone. "Your sister needs us, Claire. You're strong. You'll be fine." It wasn't favoritism, I told myself. It was pity. They saw her as fragile, like a porcelain doll that would shatter without constant handling. I told myself that being seen as strong was its own form of love, but small cracks began to show. Family gatherings became a parade of imbalance. Hannah would waltz in late, no job, no prospects, and still somehow draw everyone's attention. My parents would beam just because she bothered to show up. Meanwhile, I quietly share news of a new client or a successful launch, only to be met with dismissive nods or quick subject changes. Once, I overheard my father telling my mother, "Don't let Claire brag too much. It makes Hannah feel bad." Brag. That's what my hard work was reduced to. Bragging. I bit my tongue so hard it nearly bled. And yet, through it all, I held on to one thing. One anchor against the storm of favoritism. The necklace. My necklace. The promise that when the time came, my parents would acknowledge me not for being strong, not for being fine, but for being their firstborn, the rightful heir to a legacy that stretched back generations. That necklace was more than diamonds. It was validation, proof that I wasn't invisible, that my sacrifices hadn't been swallowed by Hannah's chaos. It was the unspoken contract between my mother and me, that promises I would learn mean nothing when envy and weakness take root, that illusion of fairness, of being seen shattered one autumn evening. It was supposed to be a celebration. My father's 60th birthday had been planned for months, a rented banquet hall, linen-draped tables, 100 faces from cousins to neighbors who still called my mother Mrs. Patel. The room smelled like melted candle wax and perfume. People laughed, clinked glasses, and told the same stories about my father's patience. Midway through dinner, my mother stood, glass raised, and the room hushed. "We have something special to share tonight," she said. 2 waiters wheeled out a small display case. They lifted the lid, and there it was, the necklace, catching the light like a tiny sun. My chest tightened. I imagined the words they would say. My mother smiled at Hannah. "We've decided it's time," she said. "Hannah, you deserve this heirloom. May it bring you strength as you move forward in life." Applause thundered. Hannah sobbed into my mother's arms. People told her how beautiful she looked, how lucky she was. I sat silent, the sound around me blurring. My hands were numb. I cataloged every promise, every night my mother tucked that velvet case away, every whispered vow about firstborn daughters. After the party, the parking lot tasted cold. I caught my parents by the car. My voice was steady. "You promised me that necklace? Since I was a child. You said it was mine." My father's face was calm. "You don't need it, Claire. You're already successful. Hannah, she needs encouragement." Something to hold on to? Encouragement? I repeated the word like ice. "You think stealing from me is encouragement?" My mother put a hand on my arm. "Don't be dramatic. You've outgrown things like this. You should be proud to help your sister. It should have broken me." Instead, I smiled and lied. "Of course. You're right." That night I lay awake. The necklace sat in their bedroom in its velvet case, glinting like a secret I could not touch. I remembered my mother's stories, how her grandmother had worn it through weddings and funerals, how it had been passed down to carry resilience. For her, it was a lesson. For them, it had become a weapon, the hurt sharpened into something quieter and colder. Their words were not careless. They were deliberate. My parents had chosen an argument I could not win. That success excused exclusion. That achievements made me less deserving of tenderness. Their faces held no remorse, only the smug pity of those who believe they are benevolent. So I folded my anger into planning rather than outcry. I stopped telling myself this was a misunderstanding. It was a decision. Decisions could be unraveled. I thought back to the small injuries that had built up over the years. My university honors left unmentioned at family gatherings. Awards hidden in drawers while Hannah's photos sat on the mantel. Relatives cooing over her struggles as if my study work were a crime. Once at a cousin's wedding, my mother pulled me aside and whispered, "Be gentle with Hannah." I wanted to ask why competence had become shame. There were slights. The spare car sold without warning when I needed it for a client. Then a lecture about punctuality when Hannah needed a lift. Praise for Hannah's flashy engagement while I was quietly urged to settle. Their affection felt transactional. Anger settled into me like a stone. I studied my parents' weaknesses, vanity, fear of scandal, need for approval. I read legal guides on inheritance, messaged an acquaintance. I knew two things about my family. One, they loved appearances. Two, they were terrible with money. Both could be used against them if I played the game with enough patience. My sister, Hannah, had pawned jewelry before when her debts mounted cheap rings. A watch she swore was vintage, but this necklace was different. This was her golden ticket, her claim to legacy, and she paraded it like a trophy. Instagram became her stage. My family's legacy, she captioned one photo, tilting her chin so the diamond caught the flash. She wore it to dinners, to parties, to bars where men twice her age stared too long. It gleamed in dim restaurants, in bathroom mirror selfies, in every curated moment of her curated chaos. The problem with flaunting treasure is that it invites eyes, hungry eyes, dangerous eyes. So I made sure those eyes found her. I reached out to an old acquaintance from college, Darren, who dealt in antiques and collectibles. He was the type of man who thrived on whispers, never outright lies, but rumors dressed just enough to feel true. Through him, I spread a quiet ripple in certain collector circles. The necklace was back in play, priceless, untouchable, a jewel that should have been locked in safes, but instead dangled freely on the neck of a girl who didn't know its value. Hannah was more than willing to play her part. All I had to do was stroke her vanity. I left glowing comments beneath her posts. Looks like royalty. That necklace deserves the spotlight. I sent her articles about fashion icons and their signature pieces. She devoured every word. Soon, she leaned harder into the performance. Selfies captioned, "Royal bloodline vibes." Stories showing her sipping cheap champagne while the necklace flashed like it belonged on a queen. The more she flaunted, the more attention followed. It wasn't long before she started receiving DMs, men and women alike, claiming to be collectors, stylists, buyers, offers to purchase, flattery disguised as admiration. She showed me screenshots laughing. "Can you believe people want to buy my necklace?" As if I'd ever sell it. I played along, eyebrows raised in mock shock. "You're right. You'd be crazy to sell, though. It is probably worth more than you think. Seeds don't grow overnight, but with Hannah, they didn't need much watering. She was impulsive, always chasing the next thrill, the next lifeline. All I had to do was wait for her desperation to meet temptation, and then came the hook, the buyer. Carefully crafted, perfectly baited, wealthy, persuasive, offering more money than Hannah had ever touched in her life. The messages were professional, the tone respectful. The number on the transfer astronomical. It didn't take long. One late-night phone call. Hannah's voice breathless, giggling. "Claire, I sold it. You won't believe how much." I smiled into the dark. She thought she'd outsmarted the world. She didn't realize she'd stepped into a trap I'd been weaving for months. The buyer wasn't real. Not in the way she believed. He was an investigator I'd hired through Darren, someone who knew how to stage transactions, create the illusion of wealth, and record every word exchanged. The money she thought she received was nothing but a placeholder. A false transfer that would evaporate in days. And now, whether she realized it or not, Hannah had sold stolen property because here was the truth. That necklace wasn't legally my parents' to give. According to my grandmother's will, still a matter of public record, it belonged to the firstborn daughter. Me, not Hannah. Not my parents. Me. By gifting it to her, my parents had committed fraud. By selling it, Hannah had crossed into criminal territory. I filed the paperwork quietly, reported the transaction, attached a copy of the will. signed affidavits, submitted the investigators' recordings, and then I let the wheels of bureaucracy do what they do best, grind slow, but grind sure. While the legal gears turned, I turned to my second weapon reputation. My family thrived on appearances, on standing tall at church events and community dinners. So I seeded the story where it would sting most, a leaked email to an extended cousin, a whispered remark at a family brunch. Strange, isn't it, that the will was ignored? That the firstborn was bypassed? It spread like rot beneath wallpaper. By the time the subpoena landed in my parents' mailbox, the whispers had become a roar. Relatives called with pointed questions. Neighbors leaned in with raised brows. Clients of my mother's boutique hesitated to book appointments, murmuring about dishonor, about deceit. My parents had always wanted a legacy. I made sure they got one, just not the one they dreamed of. Court was brutal. My parents, who once held themselves like royalty at every family function, looked small diminished on the bench. Their lawyers stammered through excuses about misunderstandings and family disputes, but the judge's face never softened. The will was clear, uncheckable. The necklace had been meant for me and me alone. The verdict struck like a hammer. The necklace was ordered to be returned. Hannah's sale was officially declared fraudulent. Worse still, because she had accepted money, even if it was part of a sting operation, the law recognized it as a transaction. That meant liability. She had, in the eyes of the court, stolen and sold property that wasn't hers to sell. The damages attached to her name were devastating. Her credit cards bled dry. Court fees piled up like a mountain she could never climb. The same friends who once cheered her Instagram post now whispered behind her back, calling her reckless, dishonest, a thief. The glittering image she built around herself crumbled overnight. My parents fared no better. Their boutique, once a polished front for social standing, became tainted by scandal. Who would trust a family that had stolen from their own daughter? Word spread fast, whispers in the salon chairs, murmurs at country club dinners. Clients disappeared one by one until the doors finally closed, shutters drawn over their legacy. And me? I didn't gloat. There were no social media posts, no triumphant speeches, no victory laps. My revenge wasn't about spectacle, it was about silence. About letting the weight of their choices crush them without me lifting another finger. I made only one statement, months later. At a smaller family gathering, I arrived deliberately late. Conversation hushed as I walked in. Around my neck, the necklace glittered, catching the light like fire trapped in crystal. I lifted a glass and a quiet toast, not a single word leaving my lips. The room froze. My parents' faces turned ashen, their eyes hollow. Hannah shrank into her seat, her mouth trembling as though she might protest but couldn't find the courage. I didn't need to speak. Their humiliation was enough. After that night, I locked the necklace away, not because I treasured it, but because its purpose had been fulfilled. It was no longer a symbol of family love or legacy. It was proof. Proof that betrayal always demands its price. It's been months since the trial. My parents don't call anymore. Hannah blocked me on everything. The silence between us feels colder than winter, but it doesn't surprise me. Betrayal doesn't leave room for reconciliation. It burns the bridge and salts the ground. Sometimes I sit in my apartment, glass of wine in hand, and wonder if it was worth it. Then I remember the look in their eyes when they told me I was too successful to deserve it. How easily they dismissed years of sacrifice as though my independence made me less worthy of love. That memory answers every question. The necklace was never just about diamonds or tradition. It was about respect, about the weight of promises spoken again and again until I believed them. They broke that bond. I simply refused to let them get away with it. Do I feel guilt? Perhaps, but guilt fades. Betrayal doesn't. Now the necklace rests untouched in its velvet case. Not a symbol of family love, but of justice. A reminder that sometimes silence cuts deeper than rage. Family should protect you. Mine tried to strip me bare. What would you have done in my place?